Hi there, and welcome to episode 82 of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. My guest this time out is British linguist Danny Bate, who divides his time between Prague and Edinburgh, where he's completing a PhD. Given his academic background, Danny, who's 26, has many fascinating things to say on the Czech language, which he himself is studying. But I also asked Danny, who incidentally helped shape Czechia's Maturita school leaving exam, about his experience of living here in the country so far. So this is me talking to linguist Danny Bate for this edition of Prague Talk. The first question, Danny. You speak Czech, you have a Czech fiancé. Which came first, your partner or your interest in the language?
The partner. Like so many people, it was love that brought me here, which is often such a common story. I think it's not very interesting for other people. But yes, my partner and I met in England many years ago now, and essentially we both finished our degrees in the UK, and having run out of things to do, I came over to be with her in the Czech Republic.
Did you have any Slavic languages when you began learning Czech?
No, nothing whatsoever. This is my first Slavic language, and yeah, what an uphill climb it's been.
Typically, what language do you speak together?
English, actually. It's primarily been English, but increasingly more and more Czech. For example, we always speak Czech to the cat. I don't know why. It just fits as a language. It feels much nicer to say, "Oh, nazdar," rather than the English equivalents. But her family primarily speak Czech with me. So, that's the best possible motivation. I don't know about yourself, but I really believe that actually a partner who speaks this language is the second best motivation for learning it. A mother-in-law, that's number one. That's a fantastic motivation for learning Czech.
You should have a mother-in-law like me who's a teacher of Czech, and she's very exacting. In my case, people tell me I speak Czech well when I first meet them. Then they say, "How long have you been here?" And I say 30 years. And then they go, oh, well, in that case, not so great. Mm-hmm. Typically, what's the response when you speak Czech with people?
Positive, very positive. And I'm sure that perhaps you're being a bit, self-effacing. I think still Czechs in general are delighted. I think it tends to be a positive reaction. I find, for example, that I get nice comments about my pronunciation. So people do say that I sound not native, but, getting there. But then the negative reactions then come in when I don't know a particular piece of vocabulary. I struggle in general with just memorizing vocabulary. And, I have my reasons for that, and I'm really trying to work on it. But you can tell that when I forget, the word for, say, put or give, what's wrong with this guy?
Well, verbs are the thing that stumped me. I don't know why that is. Is there a reason why verbs might be harder?
Yeah, there are many distinct features of Czech verbs that just... either we don't have them in English, or that we don't think about having them in English as well. A really big, hurdle that you do have to conquer with any Slavic language is the idea of aspect. Not only do you have the time when the action is happening with your verbs, but also the kind of duration. Is it ongoing? Is it a simple act? This is something that English has. It's the difference, for example, between I went and I was going. But in Czech, I find aspect is just so crucial to just getting the verb right in any way, shape or form, especially, the differences between the ways you form the aspect. If you say something like, viděl jsem versus uviděl jsem, I was seeing versus I saw, you might, as a learner, take that, you have to add something to the beginning of the verb, but then you get, četl jsem, načetl jsem. Okay, well, that's something a bit different. Then you're in the region of dal jsem, dával jsem, where actually the root of the word is changing. That's hard. All Slavic languages have this, I believe, so it is something that, once you've got it in your skill set, it's very useful to have. But wow, personally in Czech, it's the number one difficulty, and I don't feel I'll ever get it right. I think it largely comes down to, the individual vibes of the different things that you're doing, the little prefixes that you add to the verb. It's tough.
For many of us, Czech is nothing but hard work. It's something that we grapple with every day. It's basically kind of a problem that we have to get through. But for you as a linguist, how do you find the language?
I'm not going to die. It is difficult. It is difficult, especially because of where I'm coming from, being a native English speaker. But I will say that linguistics has been invaluable, truly invaluable. And I will recommend to anybody not to become linguists, don't take degrees in linguistics, you haven't got enough time for that, but believe that the answers for the problems are out there as well. All these complications, irregularities, there's a reason for them. And linguistics is the field that is providing the explanations for those reasons. A very nice example would be phonetics, right? It's to do with sounds and how we humans produce sounds. Phonetics has, as a field of study, has been around for a couple of centuries now, and we have these extremely detailed descriptions of sounds and how we humans physically produce these sounds. That's not just theoretical and abstract; it has enormous practical application. And so when I am still learning Czech, I use my knowledge of phonetics to think, hang on, what's actually going on in the mouth? What am I actually trying to do? Phonetics can tell you in very, very precise details, what you are doing or what you're not doing, what you're getting wrong. So, for example, the sounds in Czech that we don't have in English, like your palatal sounds, like dj and tj, as in děda and tati, or of course the infamous r sound, right? I mean, if you just have some detailed descriptions, what is going on? What is this r? You don't have to suffer and just think, oh, I'll never get it right. You can.
What about annoying things about Czech? I noticed on Twitter a number of times you highlighted the fact that Czechs use very different place names. For example, Benátky for Venice or Kodaň for Copenhagen. Why does that annoy you so much?
I mean, when I say annoy, that's coming from just one side of me as well. That's coming from Danny, the learner of Czech, who has to grapple with this language and perhaps just doesn't want any, bumps in the road. As a linguist, I think this is awesome. I think it's absolutely fascinating. With my scientific hat on, this says wonders about, Czechs' drive to have sort of native terms for things. I think within these very different words and names for places, we call them exonyms. They're not native names for these places. There's a lot of history that you can discern within those names, right? Often Czech has very distinct words for places that it's had long-term contacts with, right? So if you wind back to the medieval period, which is my favorite period of history, the Czech Republic, or what became the Czech Republic, had lots to do with the German city of Regensburg. Regensburg is where you had the archbishop and he had control, which he then lost, etc., etc. Well, with that, long-term contact, it makes sense that Czechs don't say Regensburg, it's Rezno. Or, for example, Cyril and Methodius, those great saints, they came from Thessaloniki. And again, that's an ancient connection back to that faraway city. Makes sense that I think it's Solun. Again, very different. So as a linguist, I'm delighted, but I suppose it is kind of frustrating because, sometimes there's just no predicting it. These are not terms that I can, think about sound changes, historical developments. They're just completely different, and they're all to do with the history. So, in English, we have the name of the country Austria, right? That's the big one when it comes to Czech place names. Austria, we get it from, partly from French, partly from German. It's the eastern part of the empire. And also, many, many languages get their word from German. In Czech, Czechs have had so much to do with what is now Austria. Yeah, I get it. It makes sense that it is Rakousko. But as a learner of Czech, that just continues to blow my mind. And it delights and frustrates me in equal measure to this day.
One thing you put on Twitter that blew my mind was when you said there was a connection between Prosek, the area of Prague, and Prosecco.
Yes.
The wine.
I did. I love that fact as well. It's true. It's very true. And that's a long story. But essentially, Prosecco needs to come from the Trieste region of around Italy, right? So that's in the far northeast of Italy. And what you get in that part of Italy and that part of, say, Austria is you do get lots of place names that actually come from Slavic. And Prosek would be a good example of that. Czech is a Slavic language. We have a Slavic place name. And what's happened is that we have maybe a Slovenian or pre-Slovenian place name that has, been Italianified. And hence it's the name of, I think it's just a small village of Prosecco. And that's where I think the wine either has to come from the village or it has to come from that area. There's lots of places like that. Graz, for example, in Austria, it's Gradec or Hradec, right, in Czech with that, Czech sound change there. But it's Slavic. So there's all sorts of place names that you can, there's actually a very helpful connection. And it makes me very happy that there is a restaurant in Prosek, which is very close to where I live in Prague, which is called Prosecco, which I just think very fitting. But that's perhaps, maybe I'm the only person who thinks so.
Getting back to yourself, Danny, how much time do you spend in the UK? How much time do you spend in Prague? And what do you do here?
My living situation is a bit odd at the moment because my university is actually the University of Edinburgh. And so I've hit upon this arrangement where I'm sort of 50% in one, 50% in the other, really because I want to get stuck in with Edinburgh. But I have my life here in Prague. I have my fiancé, I have the aforementioned cat, but also I do have my little role, my little contribution to the Czech Republic, which is working with the Maturita exam, which I love. I'm enormously proud of this small part that I play in the Czech Republic. So, if you or if someone you know have recently taken the English Maturita exam, that's my voice. And I will. I also proofread the exam as the sort of the expert, their sort of native expert. They get me in, and inevitably I have nothing to correct. It's always very, very good. But I can say I'm quite young, and the first time I turned up at Cermat, where they do the exams, I think they were quite surprised by my youth. But I'm a native speaker and I know linguistics, so I'm of some use to them, and I love it. That's me, which is quite some responsibility. I do feel that I have to maybe lower my voice around young people these days. I don't want to trigger any bad memories.
We both came here as foreigners for different reasons, but generations apart. And I have such strong memories of the 90s and the great experiences I had living here then. But I'm curious for you, for somebody who's come here relatively recently, how have you found the experience of living here?
Overwhelmingly positive. It's been a very Czech experience, very intense, thanks to Carolina's family who live in Eastern Bohemia. And it's been a real education, I will say that. I've done things that I never would have done in the UK that is quite normal for the Czechs. And so that's
like what?
Well, I've cut down a tree. I never cut down a tree before, and it's you can help us with that as well, contributing to the work in the garden and that sort of thing, which is just perhaps a little bit more extreme than it is in the UK. So it's been overwhelmingly positive, but thanks to all that time with the Czech people, the good Czech people themselves, I don't think I'm unaware of the problems that this country has. I mean, Czechs are in general quite politically pessimistic, so they're quite forthcoming with their opinions. I'm aware of that. I only say that while, yes, like every country, there are problems, there's a lot to love about this. I think there are many things like public transport, things like, the availability of sport, physical activity, which I think in the UK, it can be a little bit more exclusive. And the idea in the Czech Republic, if you have no plans for your, free Saturday, just, put your shoes on, get your řízek s chlebem, and then follow the green route, follow the, the yellow route, the red route, and just off you go and you'll go see something, is enormously accessible and inclusive. And it's just one of the things that maybe I think the Czechs, be proud of this sort of thing. I think it's just great.
Also, I see from Twitter, which is how we first met each other online, that you enjoy going from brewery to brewery.
Yes. That's very true. I love beer, so I've definitely landed in the right country here as well. I'm still, in my heart, very loyal to your traditional sort of British and Irish beers, your Guinness, for example, but I have been converted to the Czech way of doing things. It's very drinkable. Again, I just think that's great. Breweries seem to be thriving at the moment. The Czechs definitely seem to be slightly moving away from the dominance of the huge breweries, your Pilsen, your Gambrinus, your Starobruno, if you're in the east. I think that's great. I think I'm seeing a lot more variety, and just what a grand day out. I really do walk from brewery to brewery sometimes, especially south of Prague, south central Bohemia. You have these amazing traditional style breweries that's a grand day out. Obviously, you have to be careful. You want to make it to the next one. But I can definitely recommend that as a pretty affordable and pretty enjoyable day out. Just, brewery to brewery.
Finally, Danny, what does the future hold for you? Can you see yourself settling here in Czechia?
Short answer, yes, absolutely as well. I just need to get this PhD done. I'm in no hurry to do that, but I'm very much looking forward to the next challenge. I would love to settle down here. I think my fiance would like that too. and ideally something in this country to do with academia, linguistics, language. That would suit me down to the ground. I've got an open mind, and I'm well aware that every country has its different traditions of academia. Linguistics is pretty strong in the Czech Republic, I think, especially at Masarykova in Brno, and so that would be ideal as well. But really, anything to do with linguistics, language, and just taking this amazing field and just getting it to as many people as possible. It's my vocation at the end of the day. So a Czech future would just be great.
This has been episode 82 of Prague Talk from Radio Prague International. If you're new to us, there are literally 40 other editions out there just waiting for you to check out. Why not give them a go and follow Prague Talk wherever you get podcasts. For now, that's all from me, Ian Willoughby. Thank you very much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.